and welcome to Catholic Truths. Yes, it's been a very long time since I made a video, and well, when you have 7 kids, yes, 7 now, it can get a little busy and stuff. I actually have a second set of videos I do for those that follow me called The Catholic Geek, in which I pretty much just do Digimon videos with Digimon toys. Even that's been held back quite a bit lately. But given the air of things happening today in society, I thought it was a great idea to, well, maybe a good idea, not necessarily great, but a good idea to actually cover end times. And I'm going to be doing a small series on this, so if you have questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them in other videos. But today we're just going to kind of gloss over what most people are referring to when they say the end times, with the virus going around, all the riots, the supposed fleeing of Pope Benedict from the Vatican. You know, people are using these as signs that the end is near. And through all this video, I'm going to try to discuss a few of these things, and through the series, try to cover a lot of it together. As a fair warning, again, I have 7 kids. You might hear them in the background, and while I can edit videos, I'm kind of doing most of this ad-lib, so I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of editing to fix mess-ups and stuff. So also, I'm not used to filming from this angle, so if you see my eyes looking in weird angles or whatever, that might be why. Also, I do have a bit of a piece of paper I'm using as a small guide for today, so I will be looking down at it. So when we think of the end times, the vast majority of people anymore think about the Left Behind series. So they think that there's going to be this rapture where all Christians, or at least faithful Christians, are taken into the sky and they'll just disappear. And you know, when you read the Left Behind series, it is a fun story to read, and it gets you prepped and anxious. And you know, so many people have come to Christianity because of that series, but there are some problems with it. It's very erroneous. We're going to discuss today the main view of that view. Main view of that view, I mean the theology behind that view. And it's referred to as what I call Tribulation Theology. I actually Googled that and couldn't find anything that used that term, so I'm going to say that I have coined that term. Probably not, but you know, take credit where it's due, I guess. If someone else has it before me, I'll give it to them. But in Tribulation Theology, you see the view of the Left Behind series, but it's a little more complicated than just those movies, because that Tribulation Theology is divided into 3 main categories. See, the breakdown, real quick breakdown of this view is, you know, things are going to be getting worse and worse and worse for the church specifically, but also the world. Eventually, though, Jesus will come back and just take the faithful. Also, I'm moving my hands down here, so if you see weird movements, that's why. As an education major in school and stuff, you get used to doing that stuff. But what they have is the rapture, and this is taken from, I believe, 2 Thessalonians. It says, and those will be caught up in Christ, you know. And you know, and it uses the concept Jesus said, one will stay here, one will be taken, and stuff like that. Problem with, well, I'll get into problems in a minute. After the rapture is supposed to happen, then you'll have a few things that are supposed to happen that lead into what's referred to as the tribulation, a 7-year period of all these events, you know, terrible, horrible things that are going to happen, because tribulation means a bad thing. You know, you have to survive a tribulation. Like, say, if a husband cheats on his wife one time and their marriage becomes rocky and they try to work through it and they eventually do, that time period would be referred to as a tribulation. Probably a bad example, but I think y'all get it. But the end of this tribulation, which is filled with the different judgments you see in Revelation, and the second half of it is also referred to as the Great Tribulation, when God's full wrath comes out. At the end of it, Jesus will come back again, you know, with the hordes of, you know, the armies of angels and saints that are in heaven, and will come down and just with his words smite the mega army of the Antichrist. Then he'll come down and Satan will be bound, tossed into hell, and then there will be a last judgment for all people. Sounds nice and stuff, and actually if you read the last of the mainline Left Behind books, I really enjoyed reading the very end. I loved how they did Judgment, but there was a little issue with it that we can discuss later if you want to. Now, the problem with all this is we have to understand a few things. Up until the Reformation era, this was never a view. So this is literally a baby of the Reformation. Now, ironically enough, it was not reformers that created this. It were actually was proposed by two different Catholic priests and Jesuits, of all things. Today we kind of make fun of Jesuits because it's like, oh, if something went wrong, of course it was a Jesuit, you know. I don't mean anything bad by that. Our Pope is a Jesuit as well, and you know I'll just leave it at that. Some people will question some things even then, but one of them was during the 1500s. I didn't take their names. I didn't think that was going to be important for this short video, but the second one came about in the 1700s. Both of these people's works were completely, you know, refused, you know, or denied, you know, nope, rejected. That's the word I'm looking for. They were rejected by the church, and, you know, that's all it was. But in the mid-1800s, we saw a revival of this view, and real big, especially during the Restoration era. As Restoration is not the word I'm thinking of. The Second Great Awakening, I believe, is what they call it. But what ended up happening is you had this thing where they tried to bring all these different churches in the U.S. together and say, hey, we need to unite. We need to, you know, get rid of these differences. Let's figure out our problems and unite as one church. Problem is they didn't invite any Catholics or Orthodox, so that's kind of funny enough. The end result was everyone left angry, and they'd created 3 new denominations, one of which says it's not a denomination, but it really is. These would be the Disciples of Christ, the United Church of Christ, or the Church of Christ denominational version, and then just the Church of Christ, which calls itself non-denominational, but I was raised in that church. It's definitely a denomination. You know, a little bit after that, you know, early 1900s, you got into World War I and World War II and stuff, and you know, these kind of views just kind of slowly went out of the way because people were more worried about the now at that time. However, we can thank Tim LaHaye for revitalizing this move. Tim LaHaye is the side author, I should say, of the Left Behind series. I say side author because he doesn't write fiction really. Instead, he had another man, which his name is leaving me right now. I think his last name was Harris. I want to say Richard Harris, but I think that's actually the author of the Silence of the Lambs. Definitely not related. That might be Thomas Harris. I don't know. One of those two. But the Left Behind series revitalized this. When I was in high school and college, oh man, they were big and everywhere, and even I was into it. Like, one of my friends got me into it by the 4th or 5th book, I think, and so, you know, that's when all that had been out, so I quickly read them. I ate them all up, and like within a week or two, I had caught myself up to what was new, and I got really into it and stuff. And I even had a book that Tim LaHaye himself did write called Are You Left Behind, or Are You Going to Be Left Behind, or something like that, and it discusses the theology. And when I find that book, I've got it at my mother's house packed away in my old stuff. I'm going to bring that, and I'm going to review it and possibly try to give him a little bit of information on that. But, you know, as up until really my conversion into Catholicism, I kind of held that view. And then the more I started studying Catholic teaching and just factual teaching of the Bible, I started to realize there's a lot of problems with tribulation theology. Now, first of all, we need to understand that there are 3 different divisions of tribulation theology. Now, another name for this is also referred to as futurism. I don't like that term. I like tribulation theology, but futurism is a little bit easier to understand. But because of different views, you've got the 3 divisions. Now, the Left Behind series follows what's referred to as a pre-tribulation rapture. And what that means is the people, you know, faithful in Christ will be raptured before all the tribulations take place, and then they'll come back with Christ. Then you have one called mid-tribulation, which means exactly that. It takes place during the division, the 7-year period, right in the middle. There's another name for it. There might actually be an argument between these people, but they'll call it the pre-wrath tribulation, and others will say mid-tribulation. and Rapture. Pretty much both of them are saying the same thing, but with the mid, it's supposed to be right on the halfway. With the pre-wrath, it's supposed to be anywhere between the midsection and the end. So it kind of little semantics. There we go. There. Then the last one is post-tribulation rapture, and that means all the tribulations happen. Everyone has to experience together. That actually makes sense to this point. Everyone experiences it, and then at the end, Jesus comes and everyone's lifted into the air. The faithful are, including those that are dead, and then they all descend again. They had me up until the very end there. It's weird. Now, without getting into nitty-gritty, there's a lot of problems with the theology behind any of this. And a lot of it, as I like to describe it, requires you to pick and pull different scriptures out of Revelation, Daniel, Ezekiel, and maybe even Isaiah, and piece them together. And this is why I call it Tribulation Theology, because it creates a new gospel, so to speak, an end-time gospel, by pulling out what they want to make a new teaching. And that's something we're actually warned against not to do, because what was that favorite joke of mine? Someone wants to know what to do in life, so they open up their Bible and it says, and Judas hung himself. And so they're like, oh, that just, no, I'll do it again. They open it again and it says, and they put their finger down, it says, go and do likewise. So they decide not to do that. That's kind of what's happening here. They also don't use proper definitions of words. When they say rapture, they mean, when you hear the word rapture, you automatically assume, oh, everyone's going up to heaven. The problem is rapture has an actual meaning, and this is one of those things where words have meanings and meanings matter. And fortunately, not only in today's society, but even back then, people ignored this. In the King James version of 2 Thessalonians, I think it's 2 Thessalonians, whichever Thessalonians that scripture's in, it says, and those that faithful in Christ will be caught up. Arguably, that is the word rapture. So you can make the argument that rapture is in the Bible, but it wasn't translated as rapture. The problem is King James, again, I'm not a big fan of King James, but I do like his translation of this, because it means, he says caught up. So when, say, you're supposed to be at an appointment, but you run into one of your friends and you start talking and talking, and before long you realize, oh my, I'm late for my appointment, and you run, you're like, sorry, I got caught up. Oh, that's what that means. I got caught up. And it says those caught up in Christ. It means those, so involved with Christ that they've lost all notion of anything else. Divine perfection is really one way I like to describe it, a feeling of divine perfection. And that doesn't have to mean anything spiritual, because again, if you find your old friends start talking, it's kind of that same feeling. But this is even more so. So you could actually say, I'm sorry, I was enraptured with one of my old buddies, and that would be a proper term. So to say suddenly, oh, no, it means this, where everyone's lifted up, it doesn't make sense. So that's my big criticism there. But one thing to quickly point out before I end this video, and again, there's a lot of stuff I can cover, and I will cover whatever you ask me questions about, and I'll try to make some other videos just in general of what I'm doing. What is the Catholic view on end times? The word for what the Catholic view follows, and it's not a name that really Catholics have used before, but it's what really best describes it. It's referred to as amillennialism. And this is the view that the millennium is, when it talks about the 1,000-year reign, what the church views this is actually a symbolic term which refers to the life of the church on earth until Christ returns, millennium being used as a word to generically mean a very long time. And we see that very often in the Bible, where there is hyperbole and other symbolic language. So it wouldn't, it would make perfect sense for that to mean that. And the end of it, Christ comes back. No, we're not all lifted into the air and everything like that. Christ comes back. What we can view the whole everyone's lifted back, this could be the symbolic view of the bodies of the dead coming back. Because Catholic belief, when you die, you have an initial judgment in which you there go through, either go through purgatory, or you're going to hell or to heaven. I don't label purgatory as a place, because church teaching doesn't define it as a place. It's more of a state of being. Older people will refer to it as a place, and they'll call it limbo. Church has definitely separated it and said, no, it's not limbo. That's not a thing. Or it's not a thing, at least regarding this. Because, when we die, there is a place we go where there is no in-between spaces. So even if you die and you remained on earth as a, quote, ghost, so to speak, you would still be here on earth. It wouldn't be limbo. But the view is it could be all the dead coming, their bodies being resurrected with the souls. So that's one easy way to look at that. But then in the end, Christ comes back, and it's very likely a lot of the stuff in Revelation will happen. We have to understand Revelation is a parallel of what happened with the end of Rome. That doesn't mean that it doesn't refer to the end times, because clearly there's stuff about the end times, and especially the very last couple of chapters is dealing with the end of all things. So I believe there's a parallelism there and stuff. So, because you read some of that, it definitely didn't happen during the time of the Romans. And so, okay. But this is where that fantasy plays out, and people wanted to make a narrative, and this is where the Tribulation Theology comes from. But for it to make sense, you have to pull things out of other scriptures, ignore contexting when you do that, and things of that nature. But yeah, Catholic Church teaches something referred to as amillennialism. Also, I made a reference when I first started this video about some people viewing this being the end of times, with Pope Benedict fleeing Rome being one of them. This is because recently Pope Benedict went to visit his brother who's dying in Germany, and people said, oh, he's fleeing Rome. And see, he didn't have intentions to return, supposedly, because he figured he'd go sit with his brother and they'd both die of age. But he did return. He actually came back like a day or two ago. So, don't jump the gun, as they say, or jump the shark even. But anyway, that's all I have for today. If y'all have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Those of you that are going to be on Amino watching this, leave comments down as well. If y'all want to join our Amino, I have a Catholic Amino. It's just called Catholics. I also invite people to the Genesis Amino as well, and I'll have links to both of those in my comment section below. Anyway, I will see y'all next time, and thanks for watching.